501.
You're going to work off of that same thing you had sent?
Yes.
That's perfect.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Select Board meeting of September 21st, 2023. Tonight, we'll be meeting that have the three finalists that made the final step. And first of all, I'd like to just give a little synopsis on how we arrived here. The three candidates here this evening is a result of an innovative and structured process that was used by this committee and guided by our consultant, Public Safety Consultants, LLC, which is a renowned firm that specializes in public safety personnel. The procedure greatly increases chances of selecting the right person for this critical role. We are well aware that selecting a police chief is one of the most important decisions a municipality can make. Hence, getting the selection right is critical for the community's success. The committee of 12 is a diverse roster, and members selected represent a good cross-section of our residents. They were selected by following a town bylaw, Article 32, in selecting a police chief. We have members that are professional and are sensitive to. They reflect professionalism, integrity, and commitment to Milford. No favoritism or politics was ever discussed or mentioned at any of our many meetings. Our goal was to set up a good platform for our next incoming police chief. We advertised on 3 national websites and received 19 applicants, most from Massachusetts and from other states such as Nevada, Tennessee, South Carolina, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Fortunately, we have a good number of applicants that we could select from. One was an acting chief, 6 deputy chiefs, 2 lieutenants, especially 2 in this time when recruiting policemen and women is very difficult. The structural process that we narrowed down to 10. Then there was the written phase, which is this assessment of written skills, reports in court cases that how the written phase is very important. Then we had our oral interview, which is oral communication skills, which is a critical part of the selection process from top law enforcement positions. During these interviews, candidates met with our search consultant, public safety consultant, to discuss their qualifications, leadership skills, problem-solving ability, and understanding of law enforcement issues. The Police Chief Selection Committee then met with public safety consultants and reviewed and evaluated each candidate's performance. 4 candidates were selected to progress to the Assessment Center. The Assessment Center, which is an oral communication and ability, simultaneously. A lot of time and energy and teamwork to get us where we are today, right now at this time. We met the goals, objectives, and purpose of this bylaw efficiently and on schedule. And I thank the committee, and they are a benefit, and they benefited from their expertise and enthusiasm, the town did especially. And first of all, I'd like to welcome our first candidate, Benjamin Michael Murphy, who is a deputy chief in New Britain, Connecticut. Deputy Chief, you will be participating in a panel interview where board members will ask you a series of questions on a rotating basis. If you don't understand the question, you may ask the question to be repeated or for clarification. And any member of the board may ask follow-up questions to answers given. Before we get started with any questions, would you please introduce yourself to the board members and make a brief opening statement?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. I'd like to clarify that I am a retired deputy chief in the city of New Britain.
Okay.
2 months. My name is Ben Murphy, 43 years old, currently residing in Berlin, Connecticut. Excited for this opportunity and very grateful to stand in front of you gentlemen and have reached this point. It's an honor to know that 19 people put in for this position, and there'll be 3 of us competing. I met with 2 other gentlemen who are going to be competing as well. Very nice gentlemen, seem very well qualified as well. So it's an honor to sit in front of you today, and I appreciate this opportunity.
We appreciate you being here, too. Thank you so much. Speak a little louder, too.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Tom, I'd like to go the way we're going to be going is like we do at our regular meetings. I'll have you go first, then Michael, and then myself, okay?
Thank you.
Again, and myself, okay?
Thank you.
Again, any question that you want to elaborate on, you can. And 2, Deputy Chief, if you don't understand the question, ask to repeat it for clarification, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tom?
Welcome, Deputy. Nice to see you.
You as well, sir.
Can you tell me what you know about Milford, its history, its neighborhoods? how things, over the years, and I mean going back some time, Milford's a melting pot, how things evolved. Give me a sense of your knowledge of our demographics today, and then, we'll do that first, and then we'll deal with some of the next part of it. Give me a sense of what you actually know about this community.
So before I actually applied, sir, I always look for background on a city, town, or a police department I'll be putting in for. When the opening here for Milford, I got to be honest, I've had about 3 of my colleagues forward it to me before I even put my application in. They said, this is a town which you're very much for, and you should really look into what you should know about the town. So I started doing some background. My background initially starts with a Google search, and then calling. I had the very fortunate opportunity of training throughout the United States some of the really well-known law enforcement. I have some police officers in a number of my classes. So I was able to ascertain some information. Land size, 14 square miles, population about 30,000. A lot of that was put into the posting. Department size, 51. So that's stuff I need to know demographic-wise. But then started getting into, well, what's the temperature with the town and the police department? And what I got overwhelmingly is from what I saw on Facebook, from what I got online, is a very supportive town for the police department, hence one of the reasons I applied. I want to go into a place where everyone wants to be part of something they see themselves in, and I'd like to go into an agency where we're feeling welcome. In regards to the population, I know that there's a history of a large Portuguese population, predominantly if you look at the census from what I saw, and again, some of them vary, but predominantly a Caucasian community of Portuguese and now Ecuadorian and Brazilian. So there's a rising, in people who are speaking Portuguese, and there's people. I come from a city where there was about 40 to 45% Hispanic population. That's also a reason why I look towards Milford is, demographic and a diverse community. So that's one of the reasons I put in for such. I know with the last chief who's outgoing, very well respected. My understanding is was an interim chief, and the chief before that was short-term before your tenure, sir. So right now that they're looking for stability up top, and that's another reason why I considered putting myself in. I think my leadership skills and my skill set would lend itself very well for this community, sir.
What do you see as the attributes in your research, and I understand you're not here every day, what community concerns came to your attention? How would you improve things in the police department so that, for the police officers, so that they go back out in the neighborhoods and better serve the residents of our neighborhoods?
So I think the opportunity of doubling down on our community involvement. So one of the things, you have a growing, regardless of status, immigrant population. We want to make the people who live in our, sending myself out, whether that's working with the houses of worship. That was a big thing for my prior job, which I got involved in, faith-based liaison. So I assigned an officer to be a face for all of our churches, our mosques, and they touch base with thousands of people every week, specifically sometimes particular demographics or ethnicities. So the civic groups, open house and attending, whether it's backyard church bazaars or social community, getting to go and speak with those communities and letting people feel safe and comfortable. And if I'm doing that as a chief, that eventually is going to trickle down with my officers as well. Know that we need to get support from that community, and I want them to feel that they get that support from the police as well.
Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to refer to you as Deputy Chief, even though you're retired.
Yes, sir.
Deputy Chief Murphy, I'd like you to describe to me, please, or describe to the board, your views on the...
Community policing is 21st century policing talks about to do our jobs is predicated on the support of the police. So my understanding is what I would expect from officers. They're intimately involved in the community, whether that's recruiting, whether that's answering calls for service, or when that's downtime, interacting positively in schools, sporting, social events, town-wide initiatives. you need to build that trust and legitimacy. That's pillar number one of 21st century policing. And, that just doesn't come overnight. Trust is essentially a series of promises kept. So the officers in their section, their sectors, if they have a new business, they should be out speaking with that business. If there's a school in their area, they should be stopping in, not when they just have a call for a service or a planned program, checking in. I want them to see those officers, and for me, one thing I found in my 2 decades of policing thus far is when you get your homegrown people, the people who grew up in Milford, those are ones who are going to be most vested in the community. Chief David Brown from Dallas once said to his folks, if you want to make a change in policing, if you want to make a positive impact in your community, sign up. Well, people, when they see themselves in. So if the officers are out there and speaking with people personally, I think that's important. So for me, get out and walk. Attend a ball game. Volunteer your time. One of the things I did in my past practice was I started a mentoring program in our local high school. I had 23 officers sign up to be mentors for 23 students at the high school. Now, sometimes getting officers to volunteer their time is like twisting an arm. We had 23 of them sign up, very diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, genders, the same with the kids. And that got them to see them in a different light. They went there plain clothes. We would meet once a month, and they would do field trips. But we also got permission from the parents to talk with the kids offline. So if they wanted to pick up a kid and go play basketball or go grab Subway, something to eat, they were allowed to do so. And that built those bonds, and they're continuing that to this day. So that, to me, is being part of that community. Sir Robert Peel says, the people are the police are the people. That's absolutely correct. So we want to bring in people from the community, and I'd like to see our officers out there continuing those efforts and understanding the why that's important. So my old football coach used to say to me, you put enough good deposits in, one day you're going to do that withdrawal. And if you make those good deposits, because 100 attaboys go away to one uh-oh. And officers are fallible human beings, and you're going to eventually get that. So if you make good inroads with your community and something does happen, you get the ability for them to say, pause, hold on, we have a very transparent chief, we have a good police department. Let's see how they handle this before we storm the castle. So for me, that's an integral part of doing our jobs in 2023. It shouldn't be an initiative, it's a philosophy.
So that's a great philosophy, and those are great ideas. Tell me, if you were chief of the Milford Police Department, how you would put those into those philosophies and into those ideas and get them into the community working on what you just stated.
So I think that starts with me, right? The fish either rot from the head down or we lead from the front, and I'm going to lead by example. Coming in, right, I'm coming in from not only out of town, out of state. So for me, I have to establish my credibility, build that trust and legitimacy with the town. So starting with me, going to the high school football game. Hey, are we doing a recruiting event? I'm going to show up at this event and talk with our community members. And I want them to see that I'm out there. But one of the things I endeavor to do, particularly, again, looking at our agency size here, approximately 50 officers, I would have the opportunity of speaking with officers one-on-one, saying, these are my objectives, and here's why. Here's what's worked for me in the past, and here's the benefits of doing us here. So again, I will need the buy-in from my senior command staff to do so, but I think when them seeing their chief out there doing so and seeing the positive results from that, I think that will pay dividends for us down the road, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Deputy Chief Murphy, as a new police chief, what will your top priorities be in Milford?
So coming in myself, I would like to establish who I am, right? I have to build credibility. There's two things I'm coming in, people don't know who I am. And number two, if I'm selected, I'm also going to point out the elephant in the room. There's 2 other deputy chiefs who are competing for this position.
Right.
We have to work collectively too. I need to go to my command staff and understanding that I need them more than they need me right out the gate. I need to understand the culture and the environment of the police department.
Sure.
And I want to build that team. But some of the things I would like to endeavor to see our police departments is accreditation. I don't know the status of where we're at now, but everything. As a deputy chief, I saw our police department go from non-accredited all the way through stage 3 accreditation. That's in Connecticut. It's somewhat of a similar process here in Massachusetts. Tantamount to what we did there. it's achievable. And I think that helps us professionalize an agency. I think that gives officers better guidelines. I think it also protects officers and the community as well. So I'd like to see that accreditation. Some of the things I would also like to look towards is body. I know that that is an unfunded state, and it's going to be a mandate at some point. That happened in Connecticut, and I saw that as a deputy start from we didn't have them to research them to, oh, we're paying for these now. I reviewed use of force for 3+ years as a deputy. Understand that that's not mandated now, but that's going to be forthcoming, and I think that that's a tool that will be important for us. And something I would really have lofty goals here is see Milford as that destination police department to get hired at. I think Milford is at a huge advantage not being in civil service. We're not fishing from the same pool as everybody else. And I think what that allows us to do is go out and recruit more and bring in a more diverse group and more of a higher rate so when we want to. You know, again, that's one of the problems. Right now, law enforcement is hurting today. I want to be able to go there and offer the, what we have to hear. And again, I'm a football fan. I'll go back to what I saw Coach Deion Sanders doing at Colorado State. He came in with, we're going to be the best police department. We have an opportunity where we have a supportive community. We have great officers. We have a good structure here. Let's make sure we're up on our training, our tactics. Things I look towards is wellness, and there's also the community policing aspect, which we already touched on. But wellness is something that's very important to me as well. That was something I spent a lot of time on in my previous job, and that's something. You have good, healthy, strong officers, they're going to serve the community better. One of the things I did, sir, was I partnered with Central Connecticut State University. We had a health and wellness professor. She was a doctor, and she came in and talk to our officers about meal preps, sleeping. We did stretching exercises. I worked a deal with one of our local restaurants, Bistro, where they brought in healthy meals and the officers could purchase healthy meals. Because when you work midnights, you're stuck going to Cumberland Farms if you did meal prep to get a Slim Jim and a Monster. I'd rather a meal that they can grab their hands on. And essentially what I would like to do down the road is perhaps create something, if it went along with collective bargaining, some kind of incentive for the officers to stay in shape. I'm a firm believer of once you become an officer, you forfeited the right of being out of shape. And so we should be doing something yearly like, hey, are you maintaining your shape? Are you able to get to the 3rd floor if you're not gassed because you got to help out somebody who's screaming for help? So I think that that's an important aspect. And I also live by that as well. Physical fitness and training is something that's very important to me. I'm an 0600 workout guy before work. So I'd like to emulate that with the officers as well.
Tell me a little bit about your experience with budgets.
So I was able to draft and submit our $19.1 million budget in the city of New Britain. Before I left, it did not get finalized. Before I retired, I had to go through the committee, but the process which we went through was basically you drafted a budget. I worked with our administrator in the police department. That went in front of a finance committee, and one of the things I did, and this was a past practice from the former chief, which I thought was a great idea, you take only the changes, you present the full budget, but I took the changes and I presented those forward saying, here's basically a cheat sheet of where we're going up. Here's contractual obligations, here's equipment we need, and here is why we need to add this for our academy. It came in under 1% raise from last year. That got passed in about 15 minutes with the finance committee. The next step is sitting with our mayor, which was going through a line-by-line item, which she approved, and then eventually it had to go through the common council. So the training I had before that, our budget was primarily handled by the chief of police. I learned quite a bit about budgeting when I attended Southern Police Institute. We actually had a full week of training. They flew up a gentleman from Miami, Florida, who taught us about budgets. And when I attended Police Executive Research Forum, the SMIP training at University of Boston last year, they brought in an MIT professor who basically walked us through budgets. And essentially, you're looking at past practices, where we're at, and what we're going to have in the future. So, for me, I always have essentially budgets, something that's going to impact safety for the community, for the officers, and the second is continuity of services. So, understanding we have tightening of belts across the United States. As a chief of police, well, how do I get creative? Do I regionalize for equipment? Do we regionalize for units so we're not spending as much money? Are we generating enough revenue, right? Start, stop, keep. What are we doing now that's creating money, and can we bring in any more money, meaning charge more for maybe accident reports or, certain services, checking alarms? I'm not sure if that's currently the course, but that's options to do. There's also the employee concessions. I know that sometimes you have to have a courageous conversation with the union to say, here's where we're at. We're hemorrhaging money in this area. It's either we scale this back or we lose this, or can your guys take comp time? You know, I'm a fan of comp time because comp time can be managed, right? We give overtime. Overtime's immediately cutting a check. Compensation time is you can manage that and deny time off, so I think that's important. And also utilizing grants. You know, in my tenure, I've been involved with ARPA grants, JAG, DMV, so bringing in money to supplement the work the officers are already doing. That's kind of my background with grit. And I guess before that, sir, even if I'm not officially doing budgets, I ran our SWAT team for 11 years. So I had to look after a 19-man element. I had to schedule training, make sure that we weren't bleeding patrol dry with time off, and making sure we're getting our operation of about 80 people as well. So I had to keep an eye on that, see where we're at with overtime on a regular basis.
Good.
So, you have your priorities as a chief, and the finance director has his priorities based upon Benjamin's dollars and cents. Sometimes they don't meet each other. So you're told, we want you to cut 5%. What goes?
So I'm going to relay back again, is to me, if we're impacting continuity of service, meaning our ability to serve the community, and something that puts our officers at risk, you know, that to me is, you got to table that. You know, usually the low-hanging fruit is, well, we're going to cut overtime, but sometimes you can't do that. So can we use money from asset forfeiture to back up some of the equipment which we were going to use? Can we view those opportunities as well? So I think that it's important to look at other outside alternatives, but I'm going to obviously not do this unilaterally by myself. I'm going to have conversations with my command staff. Hey, where are we doing well? Where are we hurting? You know, one of the things with budgeting is you can't wait until May to look at your budget and go, oh my God, why are we in the red? It's like a doctor's office. You got to check in on it every month or so. Where are we at? Where are we trending? What do we have forthcoming? So I think that's important. So for me, it's going to work with my command staff. You know, and also I think a big difference is delineating the needs from the wants. And I'll refer back to my SWAT time, right? My operators wanted, you know, grappling hooks, howitzer missiles, and everything under the sun. And I'd say, no, guys, we don't need that. Do we need rifles? Yeah, because a rifle has so many life where you can put so many rounds down. So we're going to be able to procure that by using it. But that's common sense expenditure, not stuff we don't need.
But we reached February, you know, you're walking in the door, you reach left.
So for me, I'm probably going to...
5%, tell me what's going. You understand the number of officers, you understand the number of dispatches, you understand the other support staff that's there, whether it be custodians, whatever. And you know what, the finance director doesn't much care what services you're providing.
So I'm going to look
He has
at...
to meet his goals. Tell me the first things you're looking at to cut 5%.
So I'm probably going to take a look at, what do we have? Do we have task force officers? Do I have officers who are out there who I'm spending money on, who aren't generating money for the agency? You know, a good thing with the task force is you're getting extra hands-on when there's an issue in your town, but often you're pulled elsewhere. So I might have to scale that back. Maybe we do have initiatives where we have overtime on whatever that specific detail might be. I might be able to backfill that with a grant, but that might be something where I'm going to tell the the sergeants, you better start cutting the till on this, or we're cutting people at a certain time. You know, again, though, my concern is speaking abstractly. I know we have a couple new initiatives going on. The Family Service Unit, specifically one of them, which I read about. Very important. That's one of the last things I'd want to pull, because that's a trend.
But that's grant funds, right? So I want $350,000, and I want you to put it on paper today.
So I'd probably have to look at, what do we have for capital projects coming up? Do we have some cruisers coming? Can we make do with the cars we have? How are our communications? Are we set to get new radios? Do we have vests forthcoming? Some of the equipment which we had ordered, can we table that till next year? Or can we get a grant to supplement that? Or can we get donations for some of that work as well? So I think looking at what we have, can we push it down the road? Can we get supplemental funding for it? Or is this something we can live without? I think all those are going to be important for me. But most important, you know, I think, again, you know, something of that magnitude, hey, we need to cut 300 grand. without seeing it on paper. Maybe we're going to hold off on a couple cruisers this year, and we're going to hold off on buying new rifles until next year. We can make do with what we have. But again, making sure that there's not a safety concern with that, and that's not going to affect us being able to staff properly and have us respond to calls as well.
Tom? Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief Murphy, you have been involved in this process since the very beginning. And this evening, you've made reference a couple of times that you've researched different topics or concerns within the community or the Milford Police Department going through. I'd like to hear, if that is the fact, which I believe it is, what do you see as real, current issues within the Milford Police Department that you coming in the front door as chief would have to address, and how would you address them?
So a real issue, again, for me personally, is determining, establishing who I am. If that's more on a personal note, right? I'm going to be a leader of an agency. Officers don't know who I am. They don't know my philosophy. They don't know my... And I think that's very important, because that sets the tone of, how our agency is going to be moving forward, how I'm building a team. The things I mentioned during my assessment center, and something I look at from the 36,000-foot view, is the way our police department is structured now, we are missing managers. We go from 3 executive officers to 12 frontline supervisors and 36 officers. I like to think of an agency this size, something I would like to look at from Jump Street. I think it's warranted. Demoting, obviously, I need to look at things through the union, collective bargaining, but resolved because of overtime. That was what I got from reading. But my understanding is, I believe firmly that you have an agency of this size, and we're missing that mid-lineage over either that division or those units. That's something I'd like to look at immediately coming in, sir.
Thank you.
Good. All set, Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Chief Murphy, every municipality has their share of problems and whatnot. Have you ever had to see a problem that your municipality had and actually take action on implementing a program yourself to act?
I would like to think that the mentoring program, which I got up and going, because we have a population, of about 75,000 people, about 5,000 kids, and there was a lack of an ability to have somebody. What we started was more or less a boys and girls, big brother, big sister type mentoring program on that, and I spoke about that already, but there was another program which we started, which is actually up and coming now. It's called the Be Responsible program. This was initiated by another town. I was running point on it prior to my retirement. Essentially, we had officers back in schools, and each officer wasn't an SRO. They were teaching a curriculum similar to what DARE was, but it involved online safety, bullying, leadership. And what I did is I appointed an officer to every school as a liaison. To be able to say, Officer Smith is our assigned officer to the middle school. We're having a problem with bullying. We need somebody to come in here and do a presentation on that. Or, hey, we need to do lockdown training or active shooter. We haven't done that this year. Let's call this person. He or she can facilitate that. So I ran point with that, and I had the officers working with them as well. But one of the things also I would like to say is, we had numerous homeless shelters in the city. There was a program called New Britain Recovers, and I was part of that group. I was part of the group where basically we worked with the at-risk community of unhoused, mental health, and drug dependent. And what they had done is they opened up to allow people from that walk of life to be able to go in there and use facilities, get help, get resources, and when they first opened, they were extremely disorganized. And I was on the phone with the director almost every day, because there's a lot of people in there, they're traumatized even when they see an officer. But the problem is they had officers who were going in and checking in, and they were scaring some of the folks inside, as I was told. But then again, when we pulled back, they were having people overdose, there were fights. So we came to a conclusion of, here's when you're going to contact us, here's how you can contact us. And I made sure I put a beat back on that area, so the beat officer checked in just periodically, how things going. And that smoothed things out for that particular area. And again, it was a problem when they first opened. I think it was on their end with lack of communication with us, but I think that have been less intrusive with officers, but officers being on top of the issues there.
What age was that mentor program, the average ages?
They were generally,
Oh, good, okay. Thank you.
I don't know if you learned much about our youth center, which is a town department, our senior center, which is fairly common in communities. Have you picked up any information about those two ends?
what I've seen is just more or less what I've picked up from social media with the demonstrations with the officers, the check-ins. I know some of the community events. One of the things I've been following, I guess just from my coaching background, is keeping up with the sports programs. I coach, I don't know if I had an opportunity to mention, lifting for high school for a number of years, coach football, coach girls lacrosse. One of the things I think is very important, you know, I was a former Police Athletic League football coach in the 5 national championships in Arizona. But as a chief, I would love to be involved with the high school. I would have time on my hands, and that is something I would love to do, get involved with the high school, work with the kids, have them see their chief, you know, working with them in the way. I'm even holding the bag on the side of the sidelines for the football. That's something that's important to me. Because a trusted official, a police officer working with them pays dividends, and I think that goes out well in the community as well.
Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief, you're looking at your resume, your credentials are impeccable. Very well educated. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I'm not. You did 21 years with the New Britain Police Department.
Yes, sir.
Again, impeccable career, rose through the ranks. A question that I have, though, to be honest with you, a little troubling with credentials like you have and having worked your way through the ranks the way you did, a fairly large police department in a city as deputy chief. In my opinion, or my terminology, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like an awful young retirement. And if you could answer that, why after 21 years did you retire?
Sure. So I started at 21 years old, so I got hired at 21. I started the academy, worked through the entire police department, holding all ranks in all divisions. I actually served as interim chief for 3+ months. And hiring process for chief, I had a lot of support from our community of a rinse and repeat of what we were doing in the police department. Most of my career was operations, and one of the things I think I'm able as an executive officer is credibility with the officers who carry the water. I worked patrol for quite a bit of my career, and I thought we had a number of changes that were going to do so. And so for me, you basically need 3 things when you are a chief of police with either your select board, your mayor, or your town manager: trust, respect, and a shared vision. And I believe we had a different shared vision. So she elected to go elsewhere. What I elected to do at that point, that very night when I found out, I got a voicemail from the mayor that she was going to select somebody else. I went home and I saw a document for the new chief. You know, a lot of people said, well, you know, are you going to stick around? You're going to leave? I said, no, I'm going to get him set up. There are grants outstanding. There is a budget looming. There is contract looming. Here are things that I want him to know. And I stayed around for about 2.5 more months. But understanding that since 2017, I went back to school to get my bachelor's degree. 2020, I'm finishing up now my, I graduated in 2020. 2022, went back for my master's. I'm finishing up this fall. 3 of the law enforcement's best schools in the United States. I've worked for 7+ years to be a chief of police and lead an agency. I was capped for movement where I was at. So I took an opportunity. My wife now got a job where she works at home. My daughter was home all summer, and my son is going into his senior year. It gave me an opportunity in 21+ years, which I didn't have, to spend some time with my family, and understanding that I plan on getting right back on the horse. I don't like grass growing underneath my feet. Very, very proud of this profession. I left understanding that I wasn't going to be able to be chief where I was at because the gentleman who got promoted was a little younger than me, so he was going to be there for the duration. And I essentially, for lack of a better term, was going to be dying on the vine there. So I retired because I was eligible to do so and looked for an opportunity, and this is one that absolutely came along and seems wonderful for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, thank you. Deputy Chief Murphy, one last question. What do you see as it would be the greatest professional challenge that you'll face in making this transition to police chief?
You know, without sounding repetitive, I think for me, coming in as an outsider, from outside of town, from outside the state, building that trust and legitimacy. You know, and words without actions are just words. So for me to be able to go out there and implement some of the policies I want to do, the initiatives, I think is very important. And the other thing is building that team with my 2 deputy chiefs. They are very talented individuals. Again, if they were not to get selected for this position and I was, I need to go to them with my hat out. We need to work collectively as a team. I think we can in the state. I want us to be that destination police department. That kid who just graduated with a criminal justice degree, Milford should be on the. And that's one of the things I did throughout my career, is understanding that if we pay now to train people, you pay off fiscally and physically. Whether it's de-escalation training, whether it's tactics training, whether it's good equipment. Because if you have ill-equipped people, they're either going to hurt themselves, somebody else, that's where we're going to get sued. And when you do get sued, the first thing an attorney's going to say is, let me look at your training records. So I think that's important, but I firmly have that belief. I have that Coach pride and belief that we're going to be the best in the state, and I want that kid coming out with their CJA degree to go, Milford's top on my list. They have an energetic new chief, they have a great staff, they have a supportive community, and I want to be on the ground for that, sir.
To hear. No other questions, right? Okay, that would conclude, thank you. That would conclude this portion of the interview process. Would you like to make a closing statement?
I absolutely would. I
Good.
want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. It really is an honor to sit in front of everybody. Great questions, by the way. I thought they were very thought-provoking. You know, you can always prepare for these, but there's certain things you just got to speak from the heart, and I believe I did so. I mentioned I am a third-generation police officer. I love what I do. I recently found from my son, criminal justice in the near future. I don't push that, but that's so important to me. Having a chief of police position, being an officer, it's not a job, it's a profession. Chief is an honor, and it would be an absolute honor for me to come up and do that. And then for me, coming up here, again, this is something I've already made concessions with my family. I'm going to be moving away from my family, initially starting up here and relocating the family. And now, I left, and I'm deferring that because of there's penalties based on your age, so I'm not looking to pad my bank account. I'm hoping to be in it for the long haul. This is a absolutely wonderful town, and everything I've seen and heard, I think my skill set would lend itself very well, and I can tell you, you're going to get.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. This next on the agenda, Johnny Sanchioni. Good point. Good point. Okay, where's John?
He's right outside the lower lobby.
Oh, okay, so Ricky's probably getting him now. Just to let you individuals know, there's 3 members of the committee who did a fantastic job. Doc Heller, Stacy, and Greg.
Very nice. Thank you for your service. Good evening, Chief.
And we also had Chief Falvey on the committee, too. Chief was our committee member.
Yeah, too much.
Okay. Okay.
Good to see you. Hey. Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Doctor, you're like the most popular guy in this community. I mean, everybody knows. Huh?
Says the guy, says the guy who everybody knows.
Just waiting for our second candidate to come. He's out in the hall. He should be here any minute. That'll be John Sanchioni.
Okay.
So nice. That's fantastic. Is there a night? Not surprised. Oh, yeah. Awesome.
See, folks, I wanted to give the public an opportunity to hear, you know, like I said, these three candidates weren't just pulled out of the sky. There were a lot of work, hard time to do that, you know, to do what we're doing tonight. Well, thanks, Tom. Chief, you know what's going on? This, our next candidate?
Mr. Maloney says they're coming. Something.
Hi, John. Good evening to you.
Just get me a table.
What is it for?
And we'll move the table.
Okay.
Make it on board.
Yep.
John, welcome. Deputy Chief Sanquioni.
Good evening.
John, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be participating in a panel interview where board members will ask you a series of questions on a rotating basis. If you don't understand the question, you may ask us to repeat the question and for clarification as well. And any board member may ask a follow-up question to any answer that's given. Before we start these questions, would you please introduce yourself to the panel and as well as a brief opening statement, if you would like?
Yes, John Sanquioni, been a member of the Milford Police Department for 36 years. My whole career with the Milford Police Department. I don't come here from any other police department. I've started here, I'll end here. I rose up through the ranks. I started in 1987, hired by patrolman. Rose up through the ranks from patrolman to detective. I was also on the motorcycle unit. From there, I was promoted to sergeant in 2003 by Chief O'Loughlin, and then in 2001 I was promoted to deputy chief. I had a long career with the Milford Police Department. It's a town that I'm familiar with, the town I was raised in, the town I'm invested in, a town that means a lot to me.
Great, thank you. Tom, we'll start off. Any questions you have?
Clearly, you have a great sense of the community, John, you know, so just to move forward with some of the things, I mean, what do you see out there as issues, concerns, attributes of what's this community is about? How would you advance the police department to improve things, to involve themselves in a greater way, to make life better for the residents and in the neighborhoods?
Okay, well, I think the two major issues that we're dealing with here in our town, and in a lot of towns, we're no different than a lot of towns, is the issues dealing with mental health and substance abuse, all right? So we have a problem with that, and we have this unit. We reinstated that unit. We have two officers working in that unit now, Paul Pinto and Stephen Foss, and they're doing great work in that unit, addressing these needs. They're working with Amy Leone, they're working with counselors, they're working with clinicians, and getting the people the help that they need. They track their stats also. They've seen a sharp decline on special areas when we were having problems in the hotels. We addressed that. We put a task force together to work on that when we're having a lot of overdoses, certainly during the COVID period. So that was addressed, and we saw, once we analyzed that problem, we formulated a plan for that problem. Working with the hotel management. But that would be one of my plans. One of my future plans also would be to enhance that. I think they're doing great work right now, but I think they are overworked, and they could use some more. I'm in constant contact with Paul Pinto, and I'm in constant contact have conversations with Amy Leone and Lisa Truce, the Substance Abuse Navigation Center, to get the people to help. What they're doing, though, is they're getting people help, where we're not putting them into the emergency, right? And we're not arresting these people. We're getting them help, and that's going to be beneficial to not only the community, to the person themselves, but to us. We won't see that recidivism rate. And when people get the help that they need and become productive citizens again, that's just a win-win. You know, and if we can save a life from somebody, that's a huge win, and that's what I see. So those are my concerns and what I'm thinking about the police department and what we can do in the future and whatnot, and the good work that we do and how we can enhance that work.
So that unit was established with grant funds. How would you enhance it financially?
Yeah, that would be something that we're going to be exploring, and what we're currently exploring is that, or if not, maybe we could realign the department. I'm happy about that. We're at 51 right now. We have a full complement of officers that take them out of patrol, certainly on that 4 to midnight shift. They're up to fund that, or if the town services unit can be another option that we would explore.
What improvements would you make for the police officers, whether it be training, equipment, et cetera, just kind of modeling the right things to do so that they better serve the residents of the community?
I have to tell you, boss, we are a desirable place to work. So and I was with all chiefs from all of Massachusetts, and every one of them was telling us, how they're having a hard time retaining employees and finding good quality in Milford. We are very fortunate in Milford that we don't have that problem. Seriously, we don't have that problem. We retain our employees. Very rare do we see an employee leave Milford to go somewhere else. We've seen a lot of officers come from other departments and come to our department. And I can attribute that to you folks funding our department. They have a good contract. They work with a good contract. We got excellent equipment at our police station, all right? We have very good equipment at our police station. We have a firearms range in our police station. We have a first-rate gym in our police station. We have good uniforms. We get good cruisers. We have ATVs. We have motorcycles. Too, we can think we have good leadership in our department. It's a good place to work with the leadership that we have in place now. So I would continue do the trainings that we do. I talk to the officers that we do compared to what they used to do in other departments. As you know, I'm in charge of all the training. I've been doing training since the early 90s. So I'm in charge of the defensive tactics training, in charge of the firearms training, I'm in charge of the taser training, I'm in charge of the use of force training, I'm in charge of the in-service training. It's my job to make sure that all our officers are trained to the standards of the MPTC, the Municipal Police Training Committee, to make sure that we're in compliance with them. And we are, and we do more training than the average police department. So we're very fortunate. We have good equipment. We have good, from our guns to our cruisers to our building itself. We've made vast improvements to the building with the help of IT Director Chris George over here. He's been very instrumental in getting our building up to code as far as our IT goes, and our infrastructure in our department, our networking going. We were in bad shape. Chris squared that away from us, and we couldn't too, and our portable radios in that station. So we have great equipment. We retain our employees, and we attract quality employees. We just don't take anybody. There's departments out there now, just you got a couple of legs in a heartbeat, they're going to grab you. Not Milford. We do a very good job of vetting out candidates. We interview our candidates, we vet them out. We've turned away a number of candidates that we're trying to transfer over from other departments that just weren't a fit for Milford. So it's a great place to work. People like working here. We don't lose employees, and I think that's a testament to the town and to the police department itself.
Couldn't agree more.
Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief, you made reference earlier and also in your resume, 36 years with the Milford Police Department.
One police department.
And impeccable career. Again, you made reference to, and you supported it, worked your way through the ranks.
That's correct.
So if you were to become the police chief, what would the expectations that you would set for your command staff, having been a police officer that worked his way through the ranks, what would you set as the expectation for your command staff? And then how would you get that to the officers that are out in the community on a daily basis? In other words, how would you get your philosophy to your command staff and down to your, as we, boots on the ground is a term I hear a lot of?
I think, Mike, I think that starts with me, and I know that starts with me, with my work ethic. I'm at the station every day, pretty much every day, 7 days a week. Good or bad, but I'm there, and I'm dedicated, and I also go there to check in on the weekends and do work on the weekends and whatnot. My command staff, I think you lead by example. You're out there, and I'm out there, and I'm out there also in the car, and I'm pulling cars over too and helping out patrol and still involved in the training and still involved in the firearms training and the taser training, the defensive tactics training. I think I set a good example for these guys too. I work 20-something-year-olds, and we work out every day, and I outwork all these guys too. So I set a good example there too. I try to set a good example of how I run my life. I stay in shape. I work hard. I put a lot of time and effort. I make sure my reports are correct. I make sure the officers that are working for me that the reports are correct, that they analyze the reports, that they're doing the reviews of the reports, and make sure they're meeting all the elements of the crimes before we submit those up to the courthouse. Those are things I have done, and that's what I would expect of the people that work underneath me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Sanquioni, 36 years is a long time, and I'll tell you right now, and God bless you. But throughout that time, you've seen Milford go through some transitions with some problems and different problems, some more severe problems as the years go on. Has there been an opportunity where you could actually yourself address these problems with different programs that you could have started?
Problems in the community now, what I see is right now. We have a diverse community in Milford that we're dealing with. Population, 12% Hispanic population. I think that's more than that also. So to deal with issues like that, we're here into our country and taking up residency here and to things of that nature. And I think to diversify the police department to address those issues, so we could see officers of a Brazilian officer or someday an Ecuadorian officer to mimic the makeup of the community. Those are some of the problems that the Milford Police Department deals with. Some of the
How about like in the past, like you yourself, have you ever actually started a program yourself to actually confront or address a problem that we had?
I've solved a lot of problems in my career. Yeah, from being in detectives, we had major drug problems when I was in detectives, and I worked with the task force, and we took down this major drug operation. So I think, Paul, I got a great detective unit now working, and they're working on multiple different cases. I couldn't be happy with them. And the school resource officers dealing with the juvenile issues and whatnot. We need to put the right people in place. We've had to make some changes, and then, and as a leader, that's tough to do sometimes. We had to pull people out of certain positions and put other people in different positions that were a better fit. We needed people that were good when we're dealing with kids at school resources, and then the family services unit too, with two great people in there. So I think that team approach to dealing with the various problems that we have in town. We have a myriad of problems. We have traffic problems, we have speeding problems, and we have disturbance problems, but we deal with those problems and we address those problems as a team approach. We have good leadership. We've got good sergeants that are looking over their patrol force and keeping an eye on them. So I think that team approach to working and analyzing and scanning the problems in town and coming up with a solution to those problems, that's what's worked for me, and that's what will work for us in the future.
Tom?
So you get that phone call you don't want to get, and it's February, and you have to have this budget done by end of March.
Yeah.
Cut 5%.
Cut 5% out of 8 million, so 400,000.
Yeah.
So roughly 400,000. I would hate, here's what I would hate to do. I would hate to have to lay off an officer, all right? I would hate to have to I would have to look at the budget and analyze them. If I was to lay somebody off, that would be laying off dispatchers first, all right? And that's just the way it goes. And then the problem with that is I'd have to get officers trained to do dispatch, and then they need certain training to be sitting in there at dispatch. So I would hate to have to lay an officer off if we could trim the budget in other areas and take a look at the bottom part of our budget. And, you know, if we had to extend the year off a cruiser and you know, instead of getting a brand-new cruiser, then so be it. I think we could do that if we trimmed that, if we kept a tighter rein on the overtime, maybe had to trim down on the training, although I hate to do that too, but we do a lot of training, so maybe we could cut a little bit out of there, and we could probably make those goals. You know, our budget is tight as it is right now, but I think we could make those goals, and once again, I would hate to have to lay a police officer off. I think the town deserves to have the number of officers we have working now at the full complement. I think the town deserves that and needs that.
If you cut the dispatches, then you put the police officers in there, you train them, funds to train them, accomplish that, so then in the department.
Police services went on the department, right, we'd have to analyze this bottom portion of this, you know. I mean, there's certain things, you know, gasoline, whatever, that's gasoline, you know, do we cut back a little bit on how much we drive? You know, we've done that before, you've done that before, turn the cars off and whatnot. We need to cut back on that. Vehicle maintenance, right, vehicle's gonna get maintained. But a new vehicle, could we cut that out, right, and drive with an older vehicle for another year until things get stabilized? Replacing vehicles, office equipment, all right, and we start to cut out of that, and then we look into the overtime portion instead of the actual salaries and wages.
I mean, so if you cut out the cruises, you know, what are you looking at, I think, what do you have, 4 cars there?
Yes.
You know, if you're at 300, you still have to find another 100K. I don't think you're going to find it in overtime.
That'd be 200 if we took those 4 crews.
Maintenance, et cetera, which your maintenance is actually going to go up, isn't it?
Yeah, the 4 cruises, and we're budgeted for $272,000 for those cruises. Cut a little bit out of there. Auxiliary police equipment, cut something out of there. You know, dues and subscriptions. I mean, instead of trying to laying somebody off and taking somebody out, we just have to go through this line by line. What can we do without? Let's trim the fat here. It's going to be tight right now, and take a look at our overtime and see if we can tighten that up also. Right.
That's not fat, that's necessities that you have to squeeze.
Yes.
No, I just walking you through it to see the intensity of really looking at things.
We've been fortunate, though. Our budget's been good, and we've worked within the confines of our budget. The 2 budgets I've worked with Jimmy Falvey on. So we've been in very good shape with our budget. So we've been, this town, they've given us a good budget to work with, and we work within those confines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Deputy Chief, you made reference earlier that Milford is a very diverse community, or has become a very diverse community, which we all know that live in the community that it is. Therefore, the policing is even more important. And if you could, please, give us your views on what is community policing.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. Yeah, and you know, the Milford Police Department does policing. We do a lot of things other than just patrolling around in community policing. We have different programs. We have our explorers, and we have some of those explorers that come from that diverse community, where we're now trying to attract people from that community to get into law enforcement. We have a lot of community engagements. We have one coming up, nice spearhead. It's called Faith in Blue. We're involved with one of the religious institutions in Milford. We get together and collaborate with them and do an event every year. This year it's going to be a coat drive, like a touch a truck type event at Sacred Heart. So we engage in the community there also. We have other community events. We just had a CAST event last weekend up at the fire station, and we also had trucks and our drones were up there, and as we're engaging the community there, community policing there, our SROs, student resources, staying engaged with them, knowing what's going on with the youth. And then we also have social media platforms. We have a Facebook platform, an Instagram platform. Those have been very helpful, too, for us to get our message out and to communicate with people. Not newspaper. We were at, as a matter of fact, when I was at the training today, there was 400 chiefs and deputy chiefs in there, and there was not one of them that had a newspaper, class on media, and not one of them had a newspaper. And this is the platform that we need to get our message out. That's where people are getting their information from. So we went through that with the help of Chris here. He's been very instrumental in getting that social media platform up and going for us. So those are some of the events that we engage in the community with.
One more question.
Sure. Yeah.
So you make reference to currently what you're doing in the Milford Police Department for community policing. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, you're the new police chief in Milford. What programs would you like to see put in place within the Milford Police enhance our community policing in this very diverse community, which is only going to continue, as you know, Deputy Chief, to become more and more diverse as time goes on?
Yeah, I think, Mike, that we are on the right path. I think we do a good job right now with what we're doing. We also employed this company called Get Badged to recruit looking for. We want to get some more diverse candidates in here to be a reflection of the community. So, that's working out good. We're going to be looking at probably some more hires come January, something like that, and we're probably going to see a few people retire then. We're going to be replacing some people. It'll be nice to look at that and go to that company and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. You know, we're looking for some Hispanic-speaking officers, and so that we can have a reflection of the community that we're working in. But to continue with what we're doing now, as the boss, I'm going to expect my officers to continue with the community policing events that we're doing now, continue with that Faith in Blue event that we do, and every other event. I've been to the various churches in town and have an open dialogue and communication with anybody. I have an open office policy, and people come in to talk to me about anything.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Chief Sank, what would you consider would be the greatest professional challenge you'd face if you became the police chief?
For me personally, professional challenge? Yeah. I think it would be a smooth transition for me to become the chief. I've been fortunate with Jimmy Falvey picked me as included me in the day-to-day operations. And unfortunately, Jimmy lost his wife and had to take some time off, and I had to tell him, Jimmy, don't worry, the place is going to do this job. So I've been prepared to do this job, and I think I'm the most qualified candidate out here to do this, chief of the Milford Police Department. So I'm prepared to go to work tomorrow and continue what I'm doing. I think the ship is steering in the right direction right now. We've got it in great order. We have full complement of officers. We have great equipment. We have a great police station. We got great equipment. I just keep steering that boat and keeping it going, and just lead by example and continue to work hard like I do.
Thank you very much. Tom, last question?
I'm okay. I thank you.
No? Michael, any questions?
He answered it within another question.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Deputy Chief, as you know that
I do have one.
Okay.
everything starts in leadership from the top. And what do you think are the strongest qualities that you bring to the table that would make a good candidate, a good fit for the Milford Police Department, so that those qualities and that philosophy would work its way through the ranks of the Milford Police Department?
Yeah, Mike, that's good. I've proven myself 36 years working for one police department here at the mill. I don't come here from another police department. I didn't look to work for another police department. I stayed here my whole career, and I worked myself hard through the ranks, and I worked hard in every job I was given. You know, I worked hard as a patrolman. I worked very hard as a detective. I worked very hard as a sergeant. I worked hard as taking over all the training and the coordinating of all the training and the in-service training. Any job that Chief O'Loughlin gave me, I worked very hard on that. And I was proud when Jimmy asked me to be the deputy chief, and I think Jimmy can to attest that I worked very hard in that position. I'm there at the station a lot of hours. A lot of hours. I put a lot of time in at that police station. I do all the public records requests. I handle the budget with Jimmy. We work hard on the hiring and promoting. We had to rewrite a number of policies to conform with the post regulations. You know, we had a challenging year or two, but we got through it, and we worked. And by that team approach with Jim and myself, and then with Robbie coming on board and getting all these things accomplished, we're in good shape. You know, we were able to take all the policies, too. Policies on paper. We had policies on a scan drive. And I was able to get this company, Power DMS, and we were able to take all our policies, all our rules and regulations, all our paperwork, all the collective bargaining agreements, and we put them in this nice little neat package now on the Power DMS. And what's nice about this now is that every officer has that. Like, you come in the door, we just hired a new officer, Bailey Laughlin. He comes in the door, he has an account now with Power DMS. And in the Power DMS, it has his rules and regulations, the collective bargaining agreement, and a host of other different paperwork that's beneficial for him. Mike, I lead by example. You know, that's all I ever done. That's all I have done is been a hard worker. That from my father. He taught me to be a hard worker. Wish he was here right now. He'd be proud of me. But you know, I've worked hard my whole career. I just work hard, and that's how I lead. I lead by example. I don't expect those guys to do times. And proud to say I overwork them at times too, you know, and they're kind of amazed. So I have educated, I have my master's degree, and I've got an advanced law degree from Eric Astapenis, which deals with all the management type of things that the chief deals with, which was a great course that we went to. Chief Falvey and I went to it very hard, but learned a lot and deals with a lot of stuff. So I get the education, I get the desire, you know, and I get the temperament to do this job, and I just think I've earned this position.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Tom,
Chairman.
you had another question?
Just the staffing, the structure of the department, is there anything you would change?
The staffing, the structure, I would look at it, and I've looked at the structure too, and you know, and I was with a bunch of chiefs the last 3 days, and they kind of questioned the structure of the department and whatnot. I would look possibly go to a lieutenant position and maybe eliminate a sergeant, or maybe eliminate the 2 deputy chief positions. As far as the sergeants go, that worked out good for us because we needed the supervision on the shift. So we need the sergeants out there on the road, and certainly with, you know, the post routes and whatnot. Sergeants are very important. We need to have the sergeants out there. You know, they're the meat and potatoes of the police department. They got to be out there supervising their officers, making sure that they're doing the right thing. But the staffing level, I'm pretty happy now. We're fully staffed right now. We attract great candidates. But as far as the structure goes, boss, that's something I would look at. You know, maybe eliminate that, maybe make a lieutenant position, maybe make 2 lieutenant positions, put them in charge of patrol and one in charge of special operations.
Okay. Tom, what's that?
Yes, thank you.
One more question, Deputy Chief. As the new police chief, what would your top priorities would be like right away? You know, the top priorities you would have when you start as the new police chief?
I started as a new police chief. Like I mentioned before, I'm not going to come in there. I wouldn't come in there and make drastic changes or anything like that, because we've already done that. Jimmy and I have worked hard, you know, putting the square pegs in the square holes, so to say, and the round pegs in the round holes. I'm more than happy with the detective division right now, what I have in there. I'm very happy with the school resource officers that I have in there right now. The family services unit, very happy with that. Happy with the special operations unit. I'm happy with our dispatchers. I'm happy with our patrol officers. We have we have a very good and desirable police department, so there wouldn't be drastic changes to be made, you know what I mean? We just have to, you know, keep that, you know, and you know, my goal would be, you know, my ultimate goal would be to increase that family services unit. I just see a great need for that. I see that as a big need in our community and all kinds of communities, that mental health and addiction problem, to address those issues. Those two officers have worked, and they're overworked as far as I'm concerned. You know, they're overworked. They have huge caseloads, and they work very hard with Amy and the other clinicians. That's something I would, and I think that would be benefit to the community, you know.
Makes sense.
Get somebody some help. We don't see them committing crimes after that, right? Recidivism rate goes down, and we help somebody. We help somebody become a productive citizen. It's a win-win.
Very good. Thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, then this concludes this portion of the interview process. Would you like to make any closing statements, Deputy Chief?
No, you three know me. You know my character. You know my work ethic. You know, I have the education. I have the desire. I have the physical fitness and the ability to do this job. I think, you know, I've worked hard my whole career, 36 years here. I've worked hard my whole career. I've taken over the training division. I take over special operations. I'm in charge of, you know, special events and parades and tactical events. I've done just about everything, the detective unit, the dispatchers. I know this job. I can do this job. I think I'm the most worthy candidate for this job at this point. I think I've earned the right to be sitting here right now, and I think I earned the right to become the next chief of the Milford Police Department. And if I was, you guys wouldn't be let down. You'd be, I can show you'd be happy with that choice.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
This,
Okay. And we got Robbie. See,
Gentlemen, how are you? I don't need to. Nah, I don't need to. No. At all. Doc, how are you? Oh, everything good? What? Oh, thanks.
Okay. Welcome,
Gentlemen, hello.
Welcome, Deputy Chief Tazzino.
is in town, right?
Yeah,
Boss said he has a nice suit.
that's what it is. They become a policeman.
Yeah.
Anyway, Deputy Chief Tazzino will be participating in a panel interview where board member questions on a rotating basis. If you do not understand the question, you may ask the question to be repeated or for clarification, and any member of the answers that were given. And before we start, if you please introduce yourself to the board and also a brief opening statement if you'd like.
Yeah, I think everybody knows me, and people in the back know me. Robbie Tassino, I'm your deputy chief, one of the two here in Milford. A longtime Milford resident, born and grew up here in town. Started my police career in the NYPD, but started my EMS career here in Milford.
Okay. Tom, your first question.
With me 1 second, please. So, give me a sense, I mean, you understand the community, you've lived in this community, you grew up here, but just a sense of, you know, today's demographics, today's issues, today's concerns, how you improve upon police officers, their everyday improving things that they provide, improve services or better services to a diverse community.
So we'll start with my basis of knowledge. And a lot of this I got from my father. Driving around Milford, starting back what would be considered Braggville back in the day with a pink granite. And they would always say that he was from Braggville, down that side. and a lot of the pink granite came from that. And it was a working-class town. Settled in 1662 and incorporated in 1780 years of, people who weren't afraid to work, very family-oriented. And then that moves forward to the other section of town where my father was from. They called it a South Ender. And it was on Otis Street, Fruit Street, that side of town. And you had a lot of, at the time, a lot of Italian forward to where there's still a strong Italian homestead population, which is down in the Plains section. They call it the Plains, down by Cedar Street, down by where the mosque is now, the Shabbat Center, that whole, Rosenfield Park, that's all over there is considered the Plains section of Milford. So very diverse back in the day. There was a strong Irish immigration to Milford as well as Italian, and a lot of people don't realize this. Your two churches back in the day, you had St. Mary's and then Sacred Heart came about, and there was division back then in town. My aunt married my uncle, Richard Halloran. He was Irish, and she was told that she couldn't go to Sacred Heart. That was back then. So now Milford's diversity, I think, is more embraced. And in that whole area as a kid, at 64 Prospect Heights, to Milford, I call it the Great Migration in the 70s. What a hardworking class keep their roots and their traditions. And that's how the Portuguese Club really, I remember the old Portuguese Club, and it was all rebuilt and what we have today. But each demographic is rich in tradition. Well, that hasn't changed. And the way that we serve the communities who are rich in tradition is having these officers that are rich in tradition. I know this board is very proactive with hiring Milford people from within, promoting the local culture, and we've done that at the Milford Police Department, and we do that. And that's something we really have our thumb on. I'm proud to say that every other town, for lack of a better word, calls us for translations. Whether it be the Portuguese-speaking, Spanish-speaking, this is a big candidate pool that we have. And these are the officers that go out to these communities and they have a better interaction. Because I feel that when there's a language gap, there's hesitation in the police. And that's something that we strive to do. We strive to break down. We make it, that's something that I want to build on, and I think we're definitely on the right track for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief, let's, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, you're the new police chief at Milford Police Department. What are current issues within the department that you see on a daily basis right now as a deputy chief? You become the chief. What do you see are the real and current issues that are going on in the police department, and how would you handle to...
Our biggest problem right now is consistent staffing across the shifts. Consistent staffing across the shifts, and that problem that, the board has reached out to me to address with citizens. There's certain complaints that we try to address. Case in point, to have officers enforce strictly speeding because of our manpower and the staffing that we have on certain shifts, it's very difficult to do. So that's something that we struggle with, and I think the only way to really improve on that is to increase manning and move some staffing to better suit these needs, because it's a real issue. Staffing's a real issue. And I'm happy to say that we do a lot better. Right now we're at a full complement. There are departments that can't even get to their full complement, and we're there. A great piece of praise from, we had a company come in and recently have a sergeant's exam, and one of the people who run the sergeant's exam came to me and he said, listen, we just want you to know that our proctors and stuff during the assessment center, the sergeant's exam, were blown away by your staff. They were really impressed with the knowledge, the basis of knowledge, how they react to the community, what their thoughts were on the community. This is what we have at the Milford Police Department. So right now, it's staffing. And I would try to move some personnel, work with the union. I was union president for a long time. But we need to make some movement. I would also maybe like to change the command structure a little bit. We just need to get out of this mentality that we're this little town and we can get all these things done. You just can't. That's not the reality of it. So things have to change in that culture. I mean, we have the same staffing on shift going past 20 years, and our call volume is double, you know? It has to change. We have to make some movement in that. So that is my biggest, shifts better.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief, so you make reference to the proctors of the assessment center coming to you and telling you that they were very, very impressed by our candidates that were seeking or taking the sergeant's exam.
Correct.
Do you feel, as the deputy chief, that that is because of the quality of our command staffs at the top, or do you feel that it's more based?
So the two obviously can't run independent of each other. I think honestly, and it seems like an easy answer, but it's really both. And I'm going to tell you why. The command staff that I'm part of is very open to a dialogue with an officer, right? Back and forth, hey, I think we can do this better, or why don't you do it better this way? It's not this pugilistic, fist of a command staff that's like, you do it this way, and this is the way you do it, and I don't want to hear about it. Well, no. It's a learning curve. And sometimes it's a learning curve for me. Okay? I have an interaction with an officer, and I say, hey, what happened the other day over here? And I'm thinking this way, and this officer says, well, Dep, it was actually bing, 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 bing. And the sergeant gets involved and explains the whole thing, and they educate me. So I think, in the short answer is, it's a back and forth dialogue that makes us successful. We ask questions. That's the difference.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Chief, we mentioned before, every municipality has their share of problems. Throughout your years here in Milford, there ever been a time where you saw a problem and you needed to, let's say, start a project or start it yourself? Has there ever been a situation like that? If so, can you explain it?
Yeah, there's actually been a couple, and they're still thriving today. The first is the special operations team. Myself and Attorney, a lot of these tactical operators, there's always a component of them working every time there's a school event and a large-scale event. Okay? So basically, you have this highly trained operator fully equipped that is able to be at these events. They move the times that they work around. That doesn't go on anywhere else. All right? People don't even realize they're out there, but they're there. That's one of the biggest things that I'm really happy about. The other thing is the Family Services Unit. The Family Services Unit was basically, and I say all the time, it's my catchphrase, getting off a merry-go-round we were on, with mental health and wellness, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. You had to get off this. And as a paramedic with 30-plus years, I noticed that the time to try to mitigate a crisis is not when they're in crisis. It doesn't work. Okay? So what we did is we applied for a grant. All right? It's funded through the state and the federal government. They actually pay for us, our clinicians, our officers, our sergeant that runs it. They're not even in the Milford Police Station. They dress in plain clothes. When I tell you they're into almost 500 responses since the first of the year, and the work that they do, this is becoming a model for the state, what we have going on here. I've had more contact with outside agencies. Hey, how do you do this? Hey, what's going on? Can they come to our town? I'm like, no. So it's really something that we should all be proud of, this outreach. And that's where the real work is done. Okay? You want to talk about suffering from the disease of alcoholism, the disease of drug addiction. We work very close with the Honorable Judge Eustace in drug court. Okay? Because he works with this group. Now, I'm not going to take a victory lap for it because they're the ones that do it all. It was just my idea. But to work with these people in court, well, it's the true definition of jail diversion. These people don't need jail. They need the structure and help, and we provide that. And lastly, we remember COVID. Okay, COVID struck the country, and I'll cut to the side of it. I did a lot of things with COVID, but being a paramedic, we had people in Milford, residents in Milford, that were homebound. and I worked with the Board of Health. We got a list of these people, and because I'm a paramedic and certified to administer vaccine, I would go to their houses because it was important to do, to get them the vaccines. And when I tell you, the people that were so happy that I brought this service to them, some of them were just afraid to leave their house because of COVID. A lot of them couldn't leave their house because of medical. But think of it. You were able to bring the vaccine to these people. Where else is that happening? You know? And we didn't do that for a fee. We didn't do that. It wasn't upcharge. It was the right thing to do. This was something that I saw needed to be done, and we tackled it.
So the programs you just mentioned were, extremely great programs, and they never existed before.
They didn't, no, they didn't. I mean, and to be fair, I couldn't have done them, Attorney Laughlin worked very as a police vehicle. To this day, as deputy chief, I go to medical calls. And it was, seizure, anything extra for that. We don't bill for that. We don't get anything extra for that. And I think initially we started counting the lives that were saved, right? And we just stopped counting. That's how successful these programs are.
Wow. Thank you.
Sure.
Tom?
You get that phone call from Zach Taylor, which is a familiar name to you, and it's the end of February, and here, build your budget, cut 5%. What are you going to cut?
Cut 5% of my current budget. That's tough. I would have to say it would first have to come out of, if you had to be cut, it would have to come out of equipment. It can't come out of training. Training's too important, especially with police reform. We do very well with replacing our equipment. Our equipment is very important to us. I don't want to minimize that, but I really think that that's the only place that I could come up with any cuts would be in equipment. We would have to do a better job of life on catch-up. Some people say when it expires, you throw it away. Some people say, no, it's still good. We'd have that argument. We'd have to keep these things. But I couldn't cut training, and the reason is, with police reform, training is the cornerstone. Better officers are better trained. All right? Training and education break down barriers of bias. They break down barriers of indecision. And they break down barriers of lack of understanding. It goes one step further in communication. So training's a big chunk of what we do. I would say it would have to come out of equipment.
Where?
So we have the recurring police equipment. A lot of it would have to come out of that. We would have to make cuts like this. We do signboard notification for every department in town. We just manage it. I would have to make those cuts there, and we would have to just stick to the social media because that's a big chunk of our recurring is the money that we have to pay for the cloud. We'd have to cut it there, and the other thing too is we'd have to cut it on ammo. We have to make certain changes in the ammo that we buy. But those are the big cuts. And I could, if I had to, we could cut those services down, those notification services down, some of them anyway.
You're looking at 350, 400K. How do you get?
So obviously, those are the first place.
You want to provide services, I get that.
Yeah.
He wants to provide numbers.
I know how it is, yeah.
You got two different priorities that are
Right.
competing against each other.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the one that's dealing with the numbers is going to win, because if the money's not there, it's not there. So
Right.
how do you find me 300,000 in that budget?
Well, like I said, that's where I would definitely start there. And to your point, I would have to go to, there's a lot of, when I say equipment, so there's also general police equipment. So I'd have to go there. And then there's the equipment for the special operations team. I'd have to go there. All right? And then we'd have to maybe not purchase cars for a year. Maybe skip over that with the understanding that I can only skip over this for a year. Those cruisers run 24/7. And, we do a good job, I should knock on wood, of maintaining the fleet that we get. But there's your answer. It would come out of vehicles, not vehicle maintenance, because you got to keep them running. Vehicles, police equipment, and police equipment on every line. And I could come up with the money. It would just be hard.
It's going to go up, right?
It would go up, but again, working with the staff that I have, you'd have to let everybody know, listen, I need 5 cents to turn it to 10 cents. And I gotta tell you what, with this union, comes from Milford. So they understand.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris's Corner. And you mentioned the Honorable Judge Eustace earlier, was asked to say a few words. And you brought up earlier the word compassion. And the judge started to talk about compassion and got choked up and was brought almost to tears in front of all those people. Because he said that anybody can put somebody in jail.
Correct.
But where's your compassion? Sitting here tonight, having experienced some of that compassion, tomorrow morning, you're the police chief. How do you get that compassion to run through your police department so that every single one of your officers that responds to a concern of addiction, drug, alcohol, to me, alcohol is a drug, that's my opinion, gambling, domestic violence, whatever it is, that will have the compassion necessary to evaluate that event or situation and say, okay, wait a minute here, let's just take a step back. Because you made reference to it when you were asked to speak, the judge made reference to it when he was asked to speak, but how do we make sure that we get that same feeling to the men and women that are in our community every single day performing community policing, that compassion is the utmost important when you...
You know what? That's a well-structured question, and unfortunately, I'm giving you an easy answer. It's already there. I know that seems simple, but to come up with a big explanation, I'm going to continue to do what we do, and I'm going to continue to foster that message. The police department are bar none. I mean, this is what they're known for. I mean, I really did something. I mean, it's based on compassion. You know, in the medical field, we say there's no cure without compassion. You treat a disease, you win and lose. And that's what addiction is. You treat a person, you win every time, no matter the outcome. You know, not long ago, one of the younger people, well, let me back up, young to me, because he's younger than me, recently, you know, lost his life. You know, my guys went to a call and a well-being check, and the person was deceased from overdose. And these cops were hesitant to tell me because they knew how I'd feel. And I don't want to get choked up, but I felt bad then, I feel bad now. There's the difference in Milford. There's the difference of what we do when we interact with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Chief, the town of Milford is really looking for a visible leader in this department as well. If chosen as chief, what will you do to be a visible leader and build trust between the residents?
Again, same answer, I wouldn't change anything that I'm doing now. I've sent citizen concerns to me. And I think you all know I've addressed them immediately. And, you know, what can we do, whether it be that four-way intersection down at, you know, Fruit Street in South Main, whether it be the parking in the pond, all right, speeding and different things. We address these things immediately in the forefront. That's not going to change. The thing that I would change is I would be a chief that would make himself available at night. Because here's something we don't realize. There are a lot of people in town that don't know how to use the internet. They don't know how to navigate it. You know, I'd also like to mention this to the board. So my IT staff, which I couldn't do it without Chris George, and Jake Cavino back at our station. We're in the process of launching our new website for the police department. They've been working on it really, really, really hard. But I was talking to somebody in the silver time of their years, a Milford resident said, when I go to my son's and my son lives out of town, well, I think a chief needs to be available all times and make public hours to come in, you know, and help the community. Attending community events, like I said, that's not going to change. I do that now. Okay? Recently, I went to Shabbat Center and did the tourniquet, stop the wound, bleeding with the rabbi down there. I opened that up to anybody. I did it with the scouts. These are things that aren't going to change. You know, my interaction with the community is not going to change. That's just who I am. So not much of a change there. But I would have posted hours, you know, try to get the message out that if you need to come and see the chief or want to come and see the chief or the deputies, come in this night at this time, you can walk right into the station.
Good, thank you. Tom?
The structure of the department as it presently exists, are you comfortable with it? You look to change it? If you would look to change it, how are you going to change it? And how are you going to fund it?
Is the restructuring of the department is if you take these positions, and I'm not talking about the old mantra, put a lieutenant on the shift, that's not what I mean. I need a lieutenant detective in the detective bureau at the rank of lieutenant, okay? There needs to be a lieutenant that runs patrol, special ops, and training and stuff. Now, 2 of those positions are sergeant's positions already that we would convert to lieutenant's position, so they'll finance and go through all this. I'd only really create 1 lieutenant's position, all right? Why? It's very simple. The lieutenant's position is out of the union, all right? A detective commander has, for the most of my career, always been a lieutenant. All right, Chief Falvey was a lieutenant there for a long time. When you do internal affairs investigations, to have someone in the same unit, the same union, it doesn't work. Okay? And implementing change amongst the sergeants and direction, the lieutenant, it's the paramilitary organization. My court sergeant, if he was court lieutenant, goes to a sergeant and says, hey, your staff on your shift, when they're writing probable cause statements, needs to have this, 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 and this in it. Well, if it's coming sergeant from sergeant, it's not that it's not getting followed, but it kind of loses its luster. But in the paramilitary organization, in the chain when it comes down, so we're not taking a big cost hit because I'm really not adding anything except 1 lieutenant's position. 1. Not 4, not 1 on every shift, because I think that's a mistake. Just actually 1 and converting those 2.
Thank you.
All set. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief, to jump back onto that last question in the statement that you made, I understand you're only going to create 1
New position.
new position.
Correct.
You're going to elevate 2 current sergeants to the position of lieutenant. Basically,
Swap over, right, just move
Correct.
up, right.
what are you going to do with those 2 sergeant positions that,
On the street, they still have street responsibilities. That doesn't,
Okay.
certainly there's an increase in pay, but the increase in pay is not dramatic. In fact, that I would argue the increase in pay from a sergeant that's master's degree, and I haven't run the numbers yet, master's degree on the midnights compared to things, you know, to look at moving forward. But in my opinion, we're too sergeant heavy in certain things. Now, it was trial and error. This needs to be an ebb and flow. These are things that I've seen as deputy chief, I'd like to change and make movement. It's not that the sergeant were a bad idea. I think a lieutenant every shift is a bad idea. I think that doesn't work. That's not how this all works. But I think by having those, like a lieutenant detective, like I said, it used to be Chief Falvey, and then all of a sudden, it went to sergeant, run into that. Like, it needs to have that next tier of command.
So you're saying, just for clarity to the general public, and a supervisory role, they would just be supervising from the street as a lieutenant?
Absolutely. You can move these pieces.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Chief, basic question. What do you see as the positive qualities of a police chief?
It's the foresight, right? I think the biggest thing any commander can do in any agency is, what are our problems in the department? What are our problems in the community? Okay? And another thing a commander needs to have, which a lot of chiefs fail at this, you're not just responsible to the public, you're responsible to your people. And if you don't have their best interest, and if you're not willing to fight for them, what makes them whole, these are mothers, these are fathers, sons and daughters. They need to feel whole. And you're talking about a profession where the average age of heart attack is 46 years old. 46. So if you do the math, being my age, I surpassed a heart attack. It's going to happen every day. But you need to have that responsibility, and that's something a lot of commanders lack, and that resonates through the department like a cancer. And I would be so comfortable if any member of this department came in and in confidence, do you think he looks out for your wellness and your well-being? And I promise you the answer is going to be yes every time.
Great. Thank you.
I don't.
Michael?
I don't, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Well, Deputy Chief, this concludes this portion of the interview process, and would you like to make a closing statement?
You know, I just, it's been a long process, and I have no doubt that the gentleman from Connecticut is vetted and has the bona fide. You know, I just want to say that, you know, Deputy Sanquioni and myself have really worked hard. I think the chief can attest to that. You know, we're local guys, you know, we do care, and I think that this committee has certainly done its work. I know some committee members are here, but yeah, that's it, that's all I got.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. See ya. Thanks, pal. Like I said, it was a very intense process for all the candidates that came in, especially the three that actually made the cut, and the committee members here could attest to that. It was grueling. It was grueling for us too. We were meeting since January until really now. But like I said, we've been through it, and again, I thank the committee here for their time and energy and teamwork that you gave us, and you were a blessing to the town, I can tell you right now. But again, what these candidates had to go through was not only the screening process of the application, the written phase, which was questions that committee members themselves gave to see how well they can write, but also how well they can actually verbalize what they wrote to the oral process, and also the assessment process, which would be how they could answer questions spontaneously, how they would react in different situations. Again, it was a very intense process that they all went through, and I could say unequivocally that the committee that we had appointed to do this job was very straight and narrow. Nothing political was ever discussed. That's where we are. That's how these three individuals that we interviewed, and they were all well qualified, and Milford was very fortunate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I just think there we had people that actually sued this board and took us to Superior Court, that we could never get this accomplished in the same time period with integrity and fairness. I know myself, for one, I never contacted any of the members to have a discussion. I stayed away from the whole and let them do their business, and that's why we appointed them to the committee, and I believe it's the same for my colleagues. But, you know, it was suggested on several occasions, not one lawsuit, several, that we could not have this accomplished before the end of this year, let alone September. So I applaud the committee. I firmly believe, knowing a number of the people or their names and a little bit about them, that quality, without question, unimpaired, vodka candidates, and a process that, upon reflection by anyone, is going to show that it was fair and objective. So I know a number of the members are here this evening, and I just want to send my thanks to them. They gave us 3 great candidates. I mean, there's no other way of slicing. And you know, the old thing, you know, it's the proof is in the pudding. Well, here it is, you know. And previous committees, I think these residents from the town of Milford, true spirit of what Milford's about. It's about fairness, respect, inclusion, that anyone has an opportunity. So,
Very well said. Thank you. Michael?
Mr. Chairman, you and I had many discussions, and one of the things that you had brought up to me, the consultant firm that we had hired said to you, we've never seen a committee this large. And where I'm going with this is, first of all, as you and I both know from our years of school committee, it's an odd number.
Yep.
And the reason it's an odd number is so that when you're voting, you can never have a tie vote. And so your committee for the police chief search, I believe, was 12 members.
It was,
Which
yep.
is an even number. So now when you go to have a controversial tie, what do? And so, to what Selectman O'Laughlin or Attorney O'Laughlin has made reference to is 100%. It was a group of people from the community, from their personal agendas aside,
Right.
and go to those meetings and members that are here, and thank you to all the other members of that committee for their hour being able to keep 12 members, you know, focused.
Well, there was,
And-
with them, it was very easy.
It's a
very easy.
great group, because, and again, I go back to, the most important thing in the end result is if you take something to a vote and you come up with an even, you know, a tie, how do you handle that?
You know, and
And
That's how
so
it
that
was.
just shows,
Yep.
you know, you had the right people
sure did.
on that committee, and I can tell you honestly, personally, sitting here tonight and interviewing the top 3 candidates that you brought before us, you definitely did your job. And not only as a member of the Board of Selectmen in this community, as a resident and taxpayer in this community, I want to say thank you. Because whoever gets that position has definitely been through a process that has brought the best candidates here this evening, and now it's up to the 3 of us to take your recommendations and all the information that you brought to us and appoint what we feel, through your help and your recommendations, to be the next police chief in this community.
Just to mention, too, all the aspects and points of the bylaw of Article 32 were fulfilled. You know, nothing was skipped over, nothing was left out. Everything was point to point, right to the end.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member have any other suggestions, or any want to move forward?
I believe that
Go ahead.
I believe that the fact that these 3 individuals, all of who are presented themselves very well and, you know, put themselves on the line, that they deserve to know where this board stands and deserve to know this evening.
like I said, each member did have their resumes, and we reviewed them 4 or 5 times, I would imagine. And again, hearing their interview, so I'd entertain any motion or any other comments or concerns.
I would make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we appoint Robert Tessino, Robert Tessino is the next police chief of the Milford Police Department.
Okay?
And I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that in the event that either of us wanted to make an alternative motion that I'm not second at this point in time, I will second the motion, Mr. Chairman, unless you want to make an alternative.
No, I just, like I says, I always, that was mentioned, we had 3 very knowledgeable candidates, very fantastic candidates, for lack of a better word, and we're very fortunate of that. Someone we need, again, very key with the people of Milford, and then I wouldn't have any any other alternative to that.
My sense of it, and I just didn't want to, that's no discredit, I don't think that's fair. Both Robbie Tessino and John Sanquioni are very, very extremely capable. I had the pleasure and honor of working with both of them. I'm looking at where we going tomorrow.
Exactly.
So with that,
And Rob, tremendous police officers. Milford is very fortunate to have that type of command staff on our side. But to move the department forward, I would make that unanimous for Deputy Chief Tessino.
and if I could close, just that I thought Deputy Chief Benjamin Murphy was a fantastic candidate.
Yes, he was.
There's not a single doubt he will land on his feet, and he'll be wearing 4 stars very, very soon. Capable individual. It really came down to that base knowledge, and there's no question that he did research and has fair and reasonable understanding of Milford. The other 2 candidates take away that learning curve.
It's very difficult when you have 3 like that.
Sure is.
You're trying to sift through, and
No, you gotta, like I said, it's a photo finish.
you made reference, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, we have to do what's best for the community, with everything that's
Everything
being
that's there, how we can move
within
forward.
this community.
Right.
And as you put it, exactly, to continue to move forward.
In the various programs that were started, too, that are very successful today and very important today, that were started by Deputy Chief Tessino, was also a big help in his part. Any other comments or concerns before we adjourn?
That's it. I make a motion that we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we didn't finish the vote on the chief, I don't think we did.
Yeah, it's unanimous.
Unanimous?
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
For Deputy Chief to
That's effective immediately, correct?
It's effective immediately, right, that's what we decided.
I just wanted to make that
Right.
clear. If the meet is our obligation to him until the end of the month.
Yes, it would.